So I was 6 years old. I'm sitting in the bathtub with Rubber Ducky and the Battleship and just enjoying my bath time. And I actually heard the voice of God. It was the first time that I actually had an encounter with God. But the interesting thing is that my parents had always told me there was no God. And here I am having a conversation with some being that I thought might be God. And my parents walk in, and you would have thought they caught me with Playboy magazine or something like that, because the look on their face of consternation, of concern, was pretty palpable. And they said, "Who are you talking to, Rand York?" And I said, "Well, I'm talking to God." And they said, "Oh, we thought we explained there is no God. And when people believe in God, they're manufacturing him. They're using him as a mental crutch. There is no God." So I said, there's no God, you're sure?" And they said, "There's no God." So being the polite 6-year-old that I was at the time, they left the room, and I looked back up at the ceiling and I said, "Well, God, I have to stop talking to you now because my parents say you don't exist." And that began the first day of the next 14 years of living life as if there was no God. When we were growing up, we had a sign in the front of the home that said, "The Moors, the atheists." We had a barrel on the side of our home for burning Bibles and other religious propaganda. In fact, my first name, Rand, after Ayn Rand, an atheistic philosopher that my parents followed. And so that was really kind of the most important aspect of who I was our non-faith background. The fact that we weren't just irreligious, we were anti-religious. And from that time, those early days, we actually found ourselves homeless on the streets of Detroit, mostly because of drugs and alcohol. And when I finally landed in a kind of consistent community, did all of the normal things that happen when you come from a broken home. Early sexual promiscuity, early drinking, those kinds of things. And, so I would say that those were the most important aspects of my early years. So when I went to the University of Michigan, I fell in love with the whole realm of ideas and dialogue and debate. I became an honor student in multiple departments, and particularly philosophy was my great love. I joined a fraternity at the same time, so I had these two worlds going on, my social world with the ladies and my fraternity and my classroom activities that I loved. And in both of those realms, I acquired the nickname of Satan because in my fraternity, I persecuted Christians. And in the classroom, I also persecuted Christians. I thought, who are these people that are in my classroom? Who are these people? How did they get into the university system? I thought that everyone knew there was no God. And so I took it upon myself to lecture against them, to write papers against them, to debate them. And so I kind of acquired this nickname of Satan. Every assignment had some kind of aspect of disproving God, like why they shouldn't believe in God because of scientific evidence or archaeological evidence or pure rationality or arguments from philosophy. Because I didn't think that you needed any kind of foundation for ethics. Ethics are really nothing more than a social convention that keeps society from unraveling. But at the heart of the matter, there's nothing truly right or wrong. If there's no God, then there's no real right or wrong. We should just do whatever we want within reason. And so I remember coming to the conclusion that I was pretty sure there was no God. And I should probably think about killing myself. I was still living a pretty miserable existence. I was living in a city called Inkster, toxic fumes filling the air, gunshot violence, no dad in the home. There were lots of problems. But I didn't make the choice to commit suicide out of any kind of sense of angst or despair or depression. It was more of a rational decision. Why not just die? Wouldn't it be better just to die? And so it all came to a head December 24th, 1989. I'm sitting in the movie theater with about 400 people watching The Little Mermaid. I had a religious or kind of an anti-religious epiphany. I said, you know what? Here we are in a Christian nation on the verge of a national Christian holiday, and all we're doing is entertaining ourselves to death. There is no God. There's only The Little Mermaid. And if that's all there is, I'm going to kill myself. Where I had come to the conclusion after years of philosophy was that there really was nothing. And a life of nothing more than sex and alcohol and popularity and money was insufficient to live your life. Why invest your life and struggle and fight for these momentary pleasures if at the end of the day, it's nothing more than the abyss? And so I dropped my fiancée off and got my red sports car going about 90 miles an hour down the freeway. And my intention was to smash my car on a viaduct near the place we were living at the time. And as I got that strange, twisted courage that you need to kill yourself, I got that together, fully intending to kill myself, steered my car toward the viaduct. And a presence and a power outside of my own entered that vehicle and took hold of that wheel and steered me to safety. See, I'm the first Jesus take the wheel story long before the song came out. But I had this supernatural encounter with who I now know to be Jesus Christ. And it wasn't enough to change my mind about suicide, but it was enough to at least get me home that night and to get me to sleep on it and to entertain a different possibility. Woke up on Christmas morning, still in a cold sweat, still consumed with killing myself. And for the first time in my life, I didn't pray one of these Burger King, your way, right away, demanding prayers. I said to God, God, if that was you last night, I need to know right now because I'm still going to kill myself. I'm at the end of my rope. And I went into the other room. I have two older brothers, and one was home from another college campus, and he had brought a framed picture of the poem Footprints in the Sand. And I had read it before. I thought it was Hallmark sentimentality, but this time as I read the words of this poem, I heard the voice of God again, the same voice that I heard when I was 6, that same saturating presence. And that voice said 3 things that changed the trajectory of my life. He said, number 1, I do exist. And number 2, I'm the reason why you exist. Now, for a philosopher, that would have been all you'd need. If there's a God, then my purpose must be found in him. I'm obligated to live under his parameters. But the third thing really blew me away. He said, number 3, I'm the one who kept you from killing yourself last night, which meant that God knew who I was. He was intimately involved in the affairs of my life. And most importantly, he loved me, that he loved me enough to actually intervene and steer me to safety that night. And so in tears, I ran into the other room, and I looked up at the ceiling and I said, God, if you can take my life, and if you can make anything out of it, from this day forward, I want to live for you. I got on the phone with my fraternity brothers, and you got to get the picture. Here's Satan on Christmas morning. And the first thing they hear on the other line is, hey, guess what, guys? I'm living for God. I'm living. And they're like, hello, is this Satan? But I remember several days after that experience, just spending hours and hours on the phone, calling my best friend, calling my relatives, calling my fraternity brothers, calling my fiance, and explaining to them that I had become a follower of Jesus. I didn't use that language. I was still very raw. I was probably still praying with profanity. And so, but I had made a conscious decision that I was all in because of what I had experienced. And I was going to let everybody around me know that I was all in for Jesus. Because of my belief that Jesus is who he says he is, that the gospel is true, it has taken me around the world to difficult and dangerous places, to do things that I don't want to do, that I never thought that I would do, that I don't have to do, but I choose to do because I believe that Jesus is who he said he is. So I think that's the demonstration that you actually believe. It's not just praying a prayer. It's not just attending a church and putting some money in the plate when it's passed. It's actually living your life moment by moment as if the things that you say you believe are actually true. Well, we sing this song that's popular right now, that you're a good, good father. And I think in light of the fact that I had a father that was not a good father, and eventually God knew that I would be a boy without a father entirely. I think what God was doing at that point in time was being a good, good father. That he was loving me and giving me a legacy that I could never get from my own parents. He was giving me an inheritance that had nothing to do with material wealth. He was inviting me to a journey that would last a lifetime and even into eternity. God was giving me an incredible gift that couldn't be acquired through academics. I didn't have to prove myself. I didn't have to earn it. God was giving me everything. He was inviting me to life. And even though I closed the door and my parents closed the door, God was persistent because he knew that he had something beautiful, something great, something enormous to give me.